And welcome to the Community and Voluntary Service panel. I'm Jane Law and I'm head of the Honours and Queen's Award for Voluntary Service team at the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, which we like to call DCMS for short. DCMS is a major contributor to the Community and Voluntary Service Honours Committee, and we receive many nominations from across the sector. Joining us today on the panel are Sarah Healy, who is Permanent Secretary of DCMS, and she's also an official member of the Community and Voluntary Service Honours Committee, and she'll be chairing the panel. We're also joined by Rob Mather, founder and CEO of the Against Malaria Foundation, Paul Findlay, fundraiser and veteran, Jane Adamson, volunteer suicide lead for Believe Housing, and Carly Jones, autism campaigner, and who's also a member of the Community and Voluntary Service Honours Committee. The panellists will first share their personal stories and experience of receiving an honour, and this will be followed by a discussion on how to recognise people across the sector, including how to encourage more people to nominate others. There'll be time for your questions at the end, so please do feel free to put your questions in the chat function as we go along. Finally, if time permits, there'll be a few closing slides about the process. So may I now introduce you to Sarah Healy, Permanent Secretary at DCMS, who will chair the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you to you and your team for everything you do on honours. Jane and her team organise all of our honours processes, and there's lots of them in DCMS because we're involved in lots of different honours. Thank you so much for joining today and for showing an interest in this, and thank you also hugely to our panel for taking part in this session. I'm the Permanent Secretary at DCMS, as Jane says, but it's worth just also reflecting what that means in terms of honours. So DCMS is involved in a really wide range of honours in arts and media, sport, in economy honours, and also relevant to today, particularly in community and voluntary service. We also have some involvement in public service honours as well. So a really broad range of honours. And I always say to DCMS that actually I think honours are one of the most important things that we do, because it is really a way of celebrating success, celebrating people who make such a difference in the sectors that DCMS are responsible for. And it's really a celebration of all that happens in those worlds when we give an individual an honour, as well as an incredibly heartwarming and happy event when you see somebody receiving an honour or tweeting about it or talking about it and what it means to them. So really part of what I do that I really, really love, and that I love the department doing. But worth saying that obviously we always want as broad a range of people to choose from to get honours as possible, as high quality recommendations, and also like greater diversity of people receiving honours, so that they truly reflect the society that they are celebrating and rewarding. And that's why events like this are so important. I hope this really encourages people taking part today to become champions for honours in their sector, and that people watching also are inspired to nominate those that they know that are deserving for an honour in future. But we're going to start hearing from some honours recipients, including some who sit on the Honours Committee, which is the independent set of people who look at those nominated for an honour and make a decision about who is most deserving, and to recommend that to the Queen, who then makes a final decision about honours. So I'm going to start with Carly, who sits on the CVS Honours Committee. Carly, lovely to see you. We've sat in many long meetings together looking at citations and considering who to put forward for an honour. Would you mind just giving a short introduction to yourself? Tell us a bit about the work that you do, and also why you were nominated for an honour and what it meant to you. Over to you, Carly.
Sure, thanks, Sarah. My name's Carly. Hello, everyone. I'm an autism advocate and a autistic woman myself. Diagnosed at 32, actually, but I'm now 40, hence the blonde hair. And I have autistic daughters as well. So although, if you were to put into Google now, autistic women and girls, it would be a tsunami of information, which is great. But kind of back in 2008, there wasn't that much around, and there was real hurdles for autistic women and girls in everyday life. So I've been working on that since around about 2008 and still do today. I had absolutely the biggest shock of my life when I realised, I think it was New Year's 2017, and I got the letter through the door. And I can remember I'd just done a talk that morning at a school for autistic children, and saying, you know, you're limitless and you can do whatever you want in life, and a real kind of motivational talk. And came home, had a cheese sandwich, and there was a letter there. It all seemed a bit too seamless, actually, but it was a huge shock, and really lovely. First of all, the trickiest thing was not telling anyone for 6 weeks, but actually the wonderful thing from that, and having that time to really process it, particularly as disabled women, process the news, was to then when I could tell other autistic women and girls, it really kind of, I think, and actually the feedback from the community itself has been that's really helped them. And it's a self-esteem, a boost for all of us, really. So I still feel that I'm trying to earn it. It still doesn't feel quite real, even though it's probably 5 years on now. So being able to be on the Honours Committee itself, uplift others, see other people's incredible work, is just wonderful, and trying to get diversity in there, which we're probably going to talk more about on Thursday. But that's a huge passion of mine, is diversity in the system.
Thanks, Carly. And I mean, also, can you maybe tell everybody a bit about when you became a member of an Honours committee, and a bit more about what role you play and what it involves?
Well, I actually think I got the application wrong. So the Honours system and committee members, it's open to anyone to apply. I found it on the public appointments website, and it was the first kind of public appointments that I'd ever gone for, and I didn't actually really know what to do. I think I had to send in a CV, but I just sent this really heartfelt letter about why I'd like to help out, and that seemed to do the trick. So maybe there was that authenticity there, and that want. It's a wonderful thing. On a personal note, newspapers every day are full of sad stories, and when you're a committee member, you get to be able to read thousands of happy stories and people doing incredible things. It kind of gives you a faith back in human nature, I would say. But it's as enjoyable as it is a challenge, because it's really important for us to see the impact, isn't it, Sarah? When we get things through, we can go, oh, this looks fantastic. But it's almost like we really need to know the impact and what's changed because of that person in the community. So events like this are really important, because we can kind of get that message out, and it quite selfishly makes our job a bit easier.
Absolutely. They're also really challenging, because I mean, there's so many amazing stories that you read when you read the nominations for Honours, aren't there? And you just kind of can't, trying to distinguish between them, as you say, and just sort of pinpoint what is the big impact of that particular person is a really significant challenge. Thank you, Carly. Moving on to, we're going to have a discussion with all of us shortly, but just to introduce people one by one. Jane, would you mind just giving us a bit of a sense? Tell us about what you do and what you were nominated for an honour for.
Yeah, certainly. I was nominated in the Queen's Birthday Honours in 2020. Absolute shock. Didn't expect it at all. I work for a housing provider, Believe Housing, up in the northeast. And we were experiencing a lot of calls during COVID, where people were really struggling with the mental health. We had calls of people who were suicidal, they weren't getting access to services. As a landlord, we were contacting regular with welfare calls. So our calls actually doubled through the pandemic, with people who were really, really struggling. So I put together a team of leads with the help of colleagues. We did a little bit of training. We doubled the amount of leads we had in taking them calls. And there was a real impact on suicide prevention, getting people to replace the safety, making sure that they were accessing GP services and kind of facilitating that. So we were just carrying on doing that throughout COVID, checking in with leads and whatnot. And the next thing, I'm opening an email from the Cabinet Office, which I actually reported as spam, because I didn't expect it. I didn't know. I was like, we just had some IT training as well. So I was like, I got onto our IT department. I was like, I don't think this is right, and I don't think this is for me. And I didn't even open the email. I just saw the heading. IT came back and said it's not. And I got a call as well from the Cabinet Office, and just absolutely blown away by the nomination. It had a huge impact on me. It had an impact on family. Family was so proud, but work as well. It did open a lot of conversations in terms of mental health and that stigma around it. Um, it absolutely put mental health on the map, in terms of our organisation, but also for our customers as well. So I'm still not over it. I'm still trying to come to terms with as this actually happened. But it was a really, really good thing that happened in terms of bringing to the forefront mental health and them really difficult conversations that we were having with our customers at that point. And I just, like Sarah said before, I'm still feeling like I'm trying to earn it. I'm trying to earn my MBE. I sometimes feel, should I be doing more? But yeah, it was a really good experience.
I think both you and Carly should
Sorry, Carly.
relax and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Not feel like I'm trying to earn it myself, but also like it'd be really great. I mean, Carly mentioned how hard it is not telling anyone for a few weeks. How did people react when you could finally?
It was a shock really as well. It's certainly, keeping it from my family and keeping it from friends. Work nominated me, so some colleagues at work did know about it. But yeah, that kind of press release came out at midnight, and my phone did not stop pinging from midnight onwards. It was a little bit overwhelming, at times, but it was a good thing as well. There was a lot of press interest, locally, did a lot of interviews, again, putting mental health on the map, and the work that the organisation did as well. It was really, the outcome of that was really, really positive, lovely messages. But yeah, it was amazing and still is, continues to be.
Well, I think that is what is so wonderful, like what you said about what difference it made to the work that you do. One of the things that's most fantastic about the honours system is that it's not just about individuals. It's also about highlighting issues, raising awareness, opening up conversations. I think the same with Carly's work as well, but certainly kind of with yours. And it's terrific that it's actually had an impact on the way that your work is done and kind of reached more people as a result.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you, Jane. Let's move on to Paul. Paul, same question to you. Tell us a bit about the work that you've done and what led to you being nominated for an honour.
Hi, Sarah. Yeah, a lot of what Jane just said there resonates. I think when I got the email, firstly, I thought it was a prank. I've got a lot of friends who we play a lot of pranks on each other. So when that came in, I thought that I thought it was one of my friends playing a bit of a prank on me. Where I grew up in Glasgow, people, or what I perceive people like me don't get recognised like this. So it was a bit of a shock. And then when I realised it was real, I got quite embarrassed. I felt that I wasn't deserving of an honour like this, not compared to some of the people that I worked beside or people that I was aware of. So for me, there was a bit of a moral kind of dilemma. Part of me didn't want to accept it because I just felt that I didn't merit being honoured like this, and it was my wife who kind of convinced me that actually, I should be proud of it and I should embrace it. To this day, I still don't know who nominated me. I've asked a few people, and nobody's kind of came forward to say it was them. So the fact that someone who potentially I'm not aware of took the time to write a citation is really humbling. But yeah, to your kind of question around why, I suppose my story's slightly different from the other panelists in that I served in the military for a number of years, and in 2009 was involved in an explosion in Afghanistan, which resulted in me receiving some quite serious injuries, including the loss of one of my legs. And at that point, I was quite fortunate that there was a number of military charities that were helping out veterans like myself when we were in hospital. and a few of them really supported me when my mental health wasn't where it should be. It helped me with actions at home and various other measures of support that I needed. So I was quite passionate about giving something back, and I didn't know at the time how I would ever do that. And then when I was medically discharged from the army, I was fortunate enough to get a job in a bank in London, and quite quickly I started to look at how I could support other veterans on their transition. So I helped set up a veterans transition programme where the bank was fortunate enough or good enough to put £1 million forward, and we helped over 1,000 veterans transition out of the military and into employment, which was great. But that for me wasn't enough, so I wanted to start fundraising, and I came up with an idea where I would cycle around every football stadium, every Premier League football stadium in the country. So we'd done that over 15 days, so it was about 2,000 miles, and we raised just over 250k during that event, which that was the first fundraising event I'd ever really done, and it became a bit of an addiction. I felt like this is a great feeling. So I started just doing other events and really pushing myself, and living with a disability for me was actually more of a driver. I wanted to prove that I could do stuff that perhaps I hadn't even attempted before. And then I decided to leave the banking sector, and I went into the charity sector where I worked for a number of years supporting other veterans, and again continued to fundraise. And then when the pandemic hit, I kind of switched my focus from fundraising for veterans charities to starting to fundraise for the NHS, and I've done a number of extreme challenges during lockdown. At the same time as setting up a local community in Essex where we went out and supported people who were living in isolation. So yeah, that I suppose there's a multitude of kind of a combination of things that really brought me to this point. But yeah, I mean, it was a hugely humbling experience, and a bit like again what the other panelists are saying. It does come with a heavy weight. Now that you've been given an honour, you feel that you've got to continue. It's not about resting on your laurels. It's about promoting the good work that other people are doing. And this is just a fantastic window so that other people can look into and see that they might be deserving, or they might know other people that are deserving, because it's not something that I'd ever considered as an individual. It really isn't. And now when I see people doing extraordinary stuff in their communities, the first thing I think about is, is this somebody that I would like to nominate, or someone that you can put forward for something like this, or other nominations or awards. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic initiative.
Great, thank you, Paul. And just you talked about how your wife was really instrumental in getting you to accept it. How did you find out you'd received your honour?
Via email, and I think that was why I thought it was a prank. We're all taught, as Carly said, about phishing and different scams. And when it came in, I'd never received an email from the Cabinet Office, so I didn't know the legitimacy of the email address, and I was convinced it was a prank. And then I got a phone call, and at which point, I thought, okay, this might actually be genuine. So yeah, that's how I found out. It was quite surreal.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And then on to Rob. It would be great to hear your story as well about the work that you've done and what led to you being nominated.
Hi, Sarah. I'm an accidental fundraiser, I guess, because my charity work has started as a result of me not being very good with a remote control of a television, not being able to turn off the news, and going to a channel that had a documentary about a very badly burnt little girl. And that encouraged me to try and raise some money for her. My wife and I had 2 young children at the time, and one thing led to another. I won't take you through the whole story here, but malaria came up on my radar screen as something that I felt very passionate about raising some money for, because at that time, and we're going back about 17 years, 2.5 million people were dying from malaria every year, which put in stark terms is the equivalent of 7 jumbo jets full of children under 5 dying every day. So no more motivation than that needed to see if I could help. And I decided that it would be a good contribution to try and raise funds to provide anti-malarial mosquito nets, which is the most effective thing we can do in the world to stop people contracting malaria, because the pesky malaria-carrying mosquito bites between 10 o'clock at night and 2 in the morning. And that really was, a start 17 years ago, accidentally, of raising a few £1,000s, which meant we could provide a few thousand nets to protect people when they slept at night. And some years on, we raise many millions of pounds and can protect many millions of people each year. So I'm an accidental fundraiser, and we're a small team of people, 10 people. And it's comforting to know that the rest of the panelists here, Paul, Carly and Jane, also experienced the same feeling I had, which was this is a spam email when it came through. I then had a letter through a couple of days later, and I echo that surprise and shock when you get an official letter saying that you're going to be recognised, or perhaps I should say, all of us who are involved in AMF are going to be recognised, because I suspect that all of us on this panel would say that, as well as husbands, wives, partners, etc., none of us do anything that we do unless we have a team of people around us or working with us, and we're part of a wider group. So, I was absolutely shocked to get a letter, but in a sense thrilled for all the people that had done something, against malaria, as we have been doing over these many years now.
Thanks, Rob. And it's an amazing sort of story of like how you got inspired to get engaged with this, and got a sense from Jane and Carly and Rob, a sense of like not deserving or kind of not being worthy of the honours that they've received. Is that a sort of feeling that you share, or that actually it's made you want to live up to it in a certain way?
It's inspiring, because there is a sense of, there are so many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that do things every day that go unnoticed, or perhaps more significantly, people who are doing things and not seeking recognition. And I think it's really nice that people who don't seek recognition are recognized. Listening to some of the stories you've heard this morning about how it inspires, it creates conversations, it allows the causes that people are working on to gain greater awareness, and more people hear about things. I mean, that's a terrific side effect of the surprise, I think, that seems to often come with people being recognized. And I say it's people and teams being recognized, because it is it's almost always a group effort, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always feel when I got my honour, I definitely felt like it was actually for everybody I'd worked with, as well as my family who supported me for the work that I was recognised for. So I really agree with that. Let's move on to a discussion about the honours system, and about how we get more people to be recognised, and how we ensure in particular that people across the community and voluntary sector to be recognised. And I'd just be really interested in your views about, for instance, why do we think it's particularly important to recognise people from community and voluntary sector? Because obviously, as I said at the beginning, DCMS is involved in honours in a whole wide range of different areas, including the arts, and which often kind of get a lot of attention kind of at honours time. Why is it important to focus on the community and voluntary sector? Carly.
I don't know if you can see my hand up because my camera's at a funny angle. Well, first of all, I'd really like to echo Rob's comments, because it is the people that do things every day without seeking recognition, without wanting, a pat on the back. And it's people nominating for that. A lot of that happens in the community and voluntary sector, people giving up huge chunks of their life to support great causes. I think we were 56%. So I think it could be wrong. Sarah might have to do a quick fact check for me, but I think the Community and Voluntary Services Committee made up 56% of those recognised in this round for the Jubilee Birthday Honours. So it's a really big task, but we're really passionate about it, and really passionate about finding people. And I think it's so important for community and voluntary services, because there's so much impact, and sometimes it's the people working at really grassroots level a lot of the time who have done that perhaps for many years, but really changing the lives of individuals, the lives of their local communities, and doing it in such a selfless way. So we're not allowed to have favourites, but I actually think CVS is the best committee group, but I would be completely biased. But it's super important, and just exactly like Rob said, it's those not seeking recognition and the community around them nominating.
Do others agree? Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd echo Carly's thoughts, but also I'd say that, you know, the community groups, it really does get into the heart of every community. So the work, you know, the work that the organisations and the individuals do that kind of would qualify, I suppose, within this area really does get into the most in need, but also the most diverse communities. And when we talk about increasing diversity, you know, it's very, you know, it's very different. I suppose it's a very different person potentially that would come through this route rather than some of the more professional services. So I think it's really important to get the word out there, but also the word that Carly just used, selfless people don't go into the charity sector or go into the community sector or the voluntary sector for you know, self-glorification or for the finances or for the money. So, you know, chances are they would never think that they would merit such a thing. So I think that makes it even more important that people can recognise one another in this kind of way. So yeah, I think it's I think what we're doing in terms of raising awareness is really important.
Rob?
Rather like Carly, I don't know where my hand is on the screen.
I can see your hands.
I'd like to pick up one point that Carly mentioned there, which is impact. And I think that it's a terrific amount of, you know, quantity of impact that is caused by so many community and charity and volunteer groups. And I think that an award, if we focus on what we're talking about today, is a bit like a pebble being dropped in a pond. You know, there are these significant ripples that travel outwards, that mean that more people become aware of what people are doing, become enthused and encouraged. And I think that's, you know, one of the wonderful things we see with the sort of the pride or the delight or the surprise and the shock mixed in with when an individual is given an award, and that ripples out across lots of people, and it has a terrific positive impact.
Jane, any thoughts from you about the particular benefits of honours for the community and voluntary sector?
Absolutely agree with what everybody's saying on the panel. It's just, it does bring that service to the forefront, and the ripple effect is massive. You know, I can't add anything more than what people said today. It's phenomenal, the impact that has, and just them conversations and the services that come from it, and it just, you know, it extends the work that people do, and it's a huge honour, and it people do it with pride. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Paul, I was struck by something, yeah, and I mean, I think from everybody, it's just that sense of rewarding people who otherwise would not necessarily be known about or recognised, and issues, and the fact that it has that ripple effect. Paul, I was really struck by what you said about the fact that you receiving your honour had led to you thinking about nominating others. What kinds of people would you love to see being nominated for honours? And also, I'd be really interested in everyone's views, considering you were all very surprised to receive your honours, in what do you think is holding people back from making nominations? Everybody nominated you in your case, but why do you think people might be held back from doing that?
Honestly, I think it's probably the perception of what, you know, I think it's, you know, and wrongly, but people probably see it's quite elitist. You know, people see, you know, because when the media talks about the honours lists, it's very rarely the people that are at the grassroots level, as Carly said, or the community level that get the national media exposure. So absolutely, local media and you know, social media might pick up on some local heroes, but actually it's usually the celebrities or the people that are in high profile positions. So when that transcends down into the community level, people probably look at, you know, somebody like Marcus Rashford, who had such a platform and done such amazing work, but looking going, yeah, but look at what he's done. I can't ever get to the scale of what somebody like Marcus Rashford's done because I don't have the platform and the backing and the presence that he has. Yet people are doing and having the same impact in the community, maybe not on a national scale, and it's guaranteed to not get the same traction within the media. But people might look at that, and I know this myself, and think, well, I'm just not doing anywhere near what they're doing. So, you know, I shouldn't be recognised, and actually I probably shouldn't recognise anybody else, because what's the point when we don't have the profile? But what we're actually seeing today is, you know, as people, you know, as Carly mentioned, the stats show that the high percentage come from come from this community. So we should absolutely be driving the kind of agenda for people to start looking at who they want to nominate, you know, and also one of the other things that I think put a lot of people off of not just nominations for honours but any awards is the process itself. You know, if you know, quite, and you know, I don't sit on the committee that you mentioned earlier, but you know, I've sat on awards panels before. So I sat on the NHS awards panel last year, and sadly, quite often it's the best written nominations that get picked up, not necessarily the most deserving. And I think that you know, having, you know, the panel that I sat on, it was very much a scorecard, so you couldn't deviate very much. But I think having people, you know, like yourself, Carly, who can sit and look at it and maybe read between the lines, and you know, it might not be the most articulate, but you can get out of that the impact that it's having within the community, and start to kind of recognise people for that. So I think there's a few different things that we can, you know, we can probably work on to make people realise that this is for everyone, regardless of status or stature or you know, the celebrity status that you may have.
Thanks, Paul. And worth saying to people, there's a few comments in the comments section about citations and like how you write them, and you know, as you say, kind of whether it's the best written ones and how to get those right. Jane, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say it was never ever on my radar regarding nominating somebody until this actually happened, and it's something that I've never come across anybody else who I've known who had this nomination. So, and I think there is an element of that celebrity status of, you know, that's where you would expect an MBE nomination to come from. And it's kind of opened that up to me now. And, you know, it'd be something that I would possibly consider putting somebody forward for in the local community who does voluntary charitable work. It was just, it happened to other people, and it didn't, you know, happen to people, ordinary people, if that's the right word. I don't know, but it's just not something that I would ever have considered until now. And it certainly kind of highlighted that it is possible where I live and where I work, and that's something that other people can do and put people forward and get that work strongly recognised. So yeah, it's been a bit of a revelation for me.
Well, Carly, do you agree that all the reasons why people may be put off from making nominations might not kind of do that? And also, any thoughts from the whole panel about what more, in addition to events like this and the way that we sort of communicate, we might be able to do to encourage more nominations and a better awareness of what the honour system is? Sorry, Carly.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I think outreach like this is super important, and it's really important that people get to meet actually the committee members, the independent members themselves, because we are just everyday people from every walks of life. Great social mobility, you know, diversity within those committees, particularly CVS. It's a tricky one, because I guess from the perspective, if you hadn't met panel members of the committee before, you might think, oh well, you know, we expect it to all be perhaps politicians sat in the room, but we are just everyday people. And there is a test that I have. If you're worried about someone sending a citation through which might not be as eloquent as somebody that's got, you know, a very intellectual friend, it's called the smile test. If it makes me smile, it's in. Of course, I have to convince my fellow committee members, but yeah, the smile test for me. If it makes me smile, I think, goodness me, without this person, where would that community be? Where would that organisation be? Where would that, you know, minority group be, or whatever? That's the smile test for me. So that's not particularly academic, but it seems to be a good way of finding the gold there. Also, for those wanting to nominate who might find the process a challenge, particularly coming as a disabled woman, we now have Easy Read, don't we, on the website. The new Honours website has Easy Read nomination formats, which is particularly important if there's somebody that wants to nominate someone that might have supported them or cared for them for many years. So there are advances being made to make it more open, but I can assure you sometimes it's the smile test.
And actually, Carly, like, really echo that and the impact that it has, because you are often the person on the committee who picks up on a nomination that others wouldn't have noticed.
Yes.
Or might not kind of high profile, and you're the one who'll notice it, which I think is the application of your SMILE test in action, picking out people who might otherwise be overlooked. Rob, any reflections from you?
Yeah, so I was going to add something that Paul said about perception. I wonder if there's also, there is I suspect, an awareness issue within charities. When you're talking about very well written applications, I reflect on the fact that many people who work within voluntary organizations see every day what some of their colleagues do and are really, really familiar with how much work tirelessly goes in, the inspiration they provide. And I don't know what the committee does in terms of, informing the sector, but whether, the very cost-effective way of sending out emails to charities to say, have you considered somebody within your organization or around you? It doesn't involve, lots of mailings going out, but just raising awareness within charitable organizations that we are looking for, people who are inspiring or, create impact in various ways. And perhaps there is a communication that, again, reflects what other panelists have said, indicating the sort of thing that a committee will look for. I mean, what sort of actions, what sort of, tireless work, etc., so that people get a really quick, simple idea of what it is that is being looked for. And I think many people might find that that's actually, pretty common. There are a lot of people that do a lot of these terrific things, and that might encourage people with simple application forms and so on to put people forward.
Paul?
Yeah, I think just following on from Rob's point, and maybe this is already happening, and if it is, apologies, I've been out of the country the last few weeks, so with the build up to Honours Week, I've not been on social media, but I think what this has shown me is when you look around the panel just now, we're four very different people doing very different work and very, all within the kind of charity sort of voluntary sector, but in very different capacities. And I think that's very important to highlight and articulate that people come in very different shapes and sizes and doing very different roles. And actually, again, just come back to the point of people who make the media, but doing some kind of showcase on individual award honours nominees and recipients, and just so people can kind of resonate and go, I know somebody just like Rob who has done some amazing work for the last 25 years, but hasn't ever been recognised in this way. So I'm going to put them forward, or kind of like Carly or Jane. So, I think there's definitely, this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is obviously the start of this kind of Honours Week is the first time it's happened, which is great because it's moving in the right direction. But with the power of social media now, I think, there's absolutely more that can be done in terms of highlighting the individuals, because that's where people resonate. They want to see people that sound like them, that speak like them, that look like them and do the same work as them. And it's only then can they really resonate. And I think I was just looking at the comments after somebody put in there around, it being a class system, and somebody else saying around, making it, about it being articulate. I think it's important to show that not everybody that receives an honour, I come from a working class mining town in Glasgow. I dropped out of school at 15. Never in my life did I think that I would be sitting here today. So I think it's important to highlight that people come from different backgrounds, and that diversity is absolutely welcomed in terms of the applications.
Yeah, it's I'm sort of struck by this sense that if you've never received an honour or you've never been close to the honour system, your perception of what you need to have done in order to get an honour or what kinds of people are eligible, it's just like you can't judge it. And I think it's really, really, really helpful point, Paul, about the idea that some of the way that the publicity is done, which obviously draws attention to the honour system, which is a good thing, might actually give people unrealistic expectations about who receives an honour. Do you agree with that, Jane?
Totally agree with that, yeah. Like Paul, same background, miners, mining community, didn't have a great deal of kind of opportunities when I was growing up. And you don't hear people who sound like you and do what in the press, it's not there. So for me, I don't know, it did look like it was a class thing, rather than just people from our backgrounds, and it's about a little bit about, do we deserve it? And that was a question I certainly asked for it about, and my manager told me to own it, and I think that was really, really important. But yeah, it was never something that happened to people around me, and I think just if there can be some excitement created around Honours Week and what you need to do, and it's not a hard thing, it's not a difficult thing to do, I think that'll go a long way for people to put them nominations forward. Definitely.
Thank you. And since you all received your honours, have you been more conscious? I mean, you mentioned, Paul, you were thinking of nominating people. Have you sort of gone ahead and done that? And also, have you met other people who've received honours that you might not have noticed before because you're more conscious of the system?
So I nominated someone who actually was I think they were given an honour. I don't know if they received multiple nominations. It was somebody that was quite prominent in some of the work that I'd done. I think absolutely not. I'm now quite curious as to why people get them. So when I see someone with post nominals, I'm always kind of like, I wonder what they've done, because actually, during my kind of investiture, when you're reading I suppose the kind of the brochure of everybody that's there, and I was absolutely fascinated by the breadth of why people were in the room. Some names that I knew, and then some absolutely organisations, people, and individuals that I didn't. And I think that I'm now very acutely aware that there's a lot of amazing work going on, outside of my purview and outside of the kind of work that I do. And I think there's an appreciation now for areas that I probably didn't have before, and that's because of the interest that I've taken in the system itself.
Absolutely, and I'm going to ask you all about investitures in a minute before we finish. But Carly, good one for you here. And by the way, Paul, I'm getting the sense that really an application to sit on the Honours Committee should be on its way from you.
I was just thinking that.
Thinking exactly the same thing. Carly, one from you from the comments. Do you read every nomination received?
Yes, at least 3 times. And I'm sure everybody has their own method. Every independent committee member has their own method from where to start. But I start from from kind of the most localized. I mean, everything in our committee is going to be community and voluntary, but obviously there will be different levels at that, because we'll be looking from kind of knighthood, damehood to BEM and up and down. So I read it backwards, because my excitement comes from this person is going to get overlooked. If a fan of the underdog, is that the right phrase to use? Probably not in this context, but I tend to read it the other way around, because it's the uplifting part which excites me and annoys my fellow colleagues, I'm sure. But that's the excitement I get from it. But yes, absolutely read every single one, and is always completely blown away. Smile test then happens after kind of the second, third read. You become very, very quick at reading on the committee. Warning you, Paul, in case you've got to put an application in. You get incredibly quick at reading. But yeah, absolutely every single one's read. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. I think people feel it doesn't disappear into a bureaucracy, but does actually kind of get read as an individual comment. And I think for some of the anxieties that are being expressed in the comments about kind of the way that citations are written, not only is there lots of help, which I'm sure we'll hear a bit more from the Secretariat in a minute when I hand over to them to talk about the process, but also kind of just worth saying there is lots of help available to try and put that together. And as Carly says, kind of the committee is able to judge on the basis of the content, I think, and not necessarily the style. Before we hand over to the Secretariat, I want to hear about your investitures. So investiture is, I know it's been a bit different during COVID times, but the investiture is really the moment where you get to sort of really, I think it sort of comes home to you, the sort of enormity of receiving an honour, and just to share with people to maybe inspire them a bit. Rob, would you mind starting?
Sure. Had an amazing day at Windsor Castle with my wife, Kath. And amazing in so many ways. I mean, clearly it's sort of extraordinary, it's special, it's almost unique. We were held for about 25 minutes outside the gates where all the cars lined up, and we had 25 fascinating minutes talking to all of the policemen who were there. So, I mean, that was, so it starts off being a day where, wow, this is going to be super interesting. We spoke with the staff within Windsor Castle, really interesting hearing their stories and what they did and how the investiture, sort of works. I mean, it's an incredibly professional, not surprisingly, it's incredibly professional, it's smooth, it's unbelievably slick, extraordinary in the sense that you're walking through staterooms with Rubens and Holbeins and Van Dyck's, paintings that are absolutely enormous and are extraordinary. And you get to talk with other recipients, which is perhaps in some ways the most fascinating part of the day, echoing one of Paul's comments. You read who's at the event, and we were somewhat limited because of COVID with the nature of the interactions, but interactions there were nonetheless. And then very special spending a couple of minutes with, in our case, the Princess Royal, Princess Anne. All in all, an extraordinary day. I mean, you sort of slightly wander through it in a surreal state, but some very happy memories.
Brilliant. Paul?
Yeah, very similar to Rob. I was at St James's Palace. I actually contracted COVID the day before, so I was supposed to be at Windsor, and then had to postpone for about a month. And then I went to St James's Palace, and it was a Princess Royal as well for me. And she was our Colonel in Chief of my regiment when I was in the army. So I've actually met her a few times, but didn't expect her to obviously remember me out of thousands of soldiers that she's met. But she spent a good 6 or 7 minutes talking about my military career and talking about kind of the engagement that she'd had with my regiment or my corps. And it felt very at ease. I was expecting, it was very formal, obviously, but I was surprised at how relaxed everybody was, including Princess Anne herself. It was, it's fantastic. I mean, for me, more than myself, it was just amazing to be able to, give my wife a day out. Obviously during COVID and stuff, and being able to take her and she got a new dress and got her hair done, and then we went for afternoon tea afterwards. It was just an unbelievable day. One that I don't think anybody that goes through the process would ever forget.
Jane?
Yeah, one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had. I wish I could do it again just to take it in a little bit more, because it was literally like jaw-dropping moments. And being at Windsor Castle, had a good 5-minute chat with Prince Charles, very knowledgeable on suicide. So again, we felt, we were talking, we were having a good chat about that. Head was wobbling the whole time I was talking to him. It was I was very, very nervous, but an amazing experience, and something, like I say, I wish I could do again, just so I could soak it up a little bit more. But fantastic, absolutely fantastic. That's special.
The little kind of film, they sent me a little film of when I got my honour, and you can see the bit where I get embarrassed about how much time Prince of Wales has been speaking to me. So I try and move away, and then he carries on, and I have to go back again. It's not good. Doesn't look very professional. And Carly, finally from you, these are such lovely stories.
Can I be really, really honest? It was the best day of my life. It was also my birthday, which
wow.
and it was the best day of my life. And I know you're supposed to say that about your wedding day, but I'm divorced. It was the best day of my life. And if I could do it again, do you know what? I wouldn't, because I'd probably mess it up. I just want to kind of keep it immortalized forever. Absolutely the best day of my life. And I took got 3 daughters. One was working abroad at the time because she's a grown up. And so I took 2 of my daughters and my mum, because that was pre-COVID. You were allowed 3 then. Sorry, everyone. I probably shouldn't have said that. I'm not sure how many people you're allowed to take in now. But yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. And the girls loved it. My mum got a new hat. So everyone was happy. It was absolutely awesome.
Jane?
Can I just say I got tracked and traced as well, because Prince Charles got COVID the following day.
Very good.
I got lots of messages to ask if I had COVID, and I was like, no, it's fine. He did not pass anything on.
That was brilliant story. Yeah. Any last comments from each of you? Anything you haven't said that you'd like to say to everyone? Brilliant. Look, thank you so much for joining us. That was really inspiring, really interesting, really, I think, brought home to everybody the reality of sort of how we really managed to promote and get people engaged in the honours system, and hearing your stories is a fantastic way of doing that. So thank you all so much. I'm gonna, I think, hand over now to Jane, who is going to take us through answering some people's questions. But thank you all very much. And Jane, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I think we've answered quite a lot of the questions as we've been going along, which is very helpful. But there is one actually I'd like to ask Sarah or Carly about. There's a question about how does a person become part of an honours committee, and is it divided into geographically local areas? So that would be very helpful if you could give us your view, please.
Yeah, I can help out a little bit of that, and then I'll pass on to Sarah, who will probably have a better response. Geographically, no. However, everybody in the committee comes from many different places within the UK, and then obviously there are permanent secretaries as well that will represent other parts of the UK as well. So I would say geographically it's very fair, but we're not kind of split up into geographical areas as committees. The committees are just about that particular type of service. And if you wanted to apply, vacancies are normally put up on the public appointment site. So if you keep an eye on that, it's not a paid role, it is a voluntary role. Also, if you work in CVS, helping to recognise voluntary people would be a bit of a hypocrite, wouldn't it? If we were then wanted to get paid, it is a voluntary role, but it's one of the best, not really, jobs in the world, if in inverted commas. But perhaps Sarah's got some more insight on that.
No, I think that's exactly right, Carly. Kind of, look out for options and then apply. And CVS in particular, very diverse. In fact, all the honours committees try and have independent representation from kind of across the sector, so that we get the right sort of balance of input in deciding who receives an honour. There's another comment about feedback, and I think on that one we just have to acknowledge, with the number of nominations we get, giving individual feedback to everyone I think would be a bit too difficult to do, a bit too costly for the system as a whole. So I recognise that can be frustrating if you put a nomination in and you don't hear back and you don't know why it hasn't got through. Jane?
Yeah, and actually I'd add to that as well, which is absolutely the volumes make that impossible, but actually you can re-nominate anybody at any point and supply additional information if something changes, or you can see that there's more evidence. And actually the most important thing when considering a nomination or drafting citation is it's all about the impact the person has, the evidence. It's what have they done and how have they done it, and part of the work of an honours team is actually when they receive nominations is to sort of assess that, and we will often get back in touch with nominators to get more information. So there is quite a lot, there are different ways to get hold of information. It doesn't always come down to just the nomination form. I think sort of the other questions were mainly around, how to write a good nomination or citation. And so just wanted to make sure everybody had seen the signpost to two things, which is the Cabinet Office website, where there is a lot more information about all of this. And also there is another session coming up as part of the Honours Festival today at 11:15, which is all about sort of how to draft a really good citation or a nomination. So please do join that session if you're interested. So I think we're almost at the end of the questions now, unless just think if there's anything else popped up in the comments. Okay, there's a good one. I think if you nominate someone who covers a few areas, say CVS and health, how to decide which committee considers the nominations? Well, that is for the honours teams. We work very closely with each other across all the Whitehall departments, and we will consult each other and decide where the balance of the contribution actually lies, and we'll put the suggestion forward to Cabinet Office that they go to the most appropriate committee. However, sometimes nominations go to more than one committee. I think that's it. Are there any other questions that people would like answers to? Please put them in the chat. I can also see some references to QAVS. So if people are wondering what that is, that's the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service, and that's a scheme that my team work on and sort of support on behalf of the Palace. And basically, that's an MBE for groups. So it's for groups of volunteers who are delivering a massive impact locally. So Honours is about individuals, but actually QAVS is for groups. So if you've got any questions about that and would like to know more about that, then please do get in touch with us. And we're if you just Google QAVS, it will pop up as an address, but there's a website, and we also have an inbox. So the website is qavs.dcms.gov.uk. So please feel free to get in touch and ask us questions. I think that's it, looking through the comments. So if that's it on the questions, perhaps we can finish now with some slides about how does it all work, and also how do you nominate. So how does it all work? Well, as we talked about earlier, the nominations come in from different routes. So as you can see there, some come through stakeholders, but the majority on CVS actually come in from the public. They're sent to departments to actually assess, who then sort of make recommendations to the independent honours committees, who make their decisions. Then they go to the committee, the main committee, which actually oversees the whole process, and then the final list is sent to the Prime Minister to be approved, and then he sends it on to the Queen for her to give her final agreement to. So that's the actual process. Next slide, please. So you're ready. So hopefully after today you're ready to nominate someone. So if you are, you'll need to make sure your nomination includes examples of how your nominee has made a significant contribution, gone above and beyond what's normally expected, and has had a very positive impact on society. Just one thing worth mentioning, obviously all nominations must be confidential, so the individual should never know that they've been nominated. Nominations can take between 18 and 24 months to actually get through the system. That allows time for all sorts of the assessment to be done, but also the honours committees sit twice a year. So you can see how sort of it can take a bit of a time to get them through the process. All nominations, as well as having nomination form, need to have 2 letters of support. So you need to bear that in mind as well. And as you can see there, there's the signpost to the Honours Cabinet, to the Cabinet Office Honours website for more information, and also how you can contact Cabinet Office if you've got any questions. Finally, it's been very nice to have you here today, so thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much to all the panel members for sort of their excellent contributions, and to Sarah Healy for chairing. But if you would like to join another event, there are sort of a few more events today and some more tomorrow, as you can see in the slide. And as I said earlier, there's a really good one coming up at 11:15 on how to make a nomination, so please do join that if you're interested. So all that remains for me to say is thank you for joining us, and hope you found it useful. Thank you. Bye.